This is Josh Terry here at Louisiana Academy of Performing Arts, here to give you another guitar lanyard lesson. Today we're going to talk about legato technique. Now what does legato mean? It just means kind of smooth. When you go from note to note, instead of having an abrupt disconnect between the notes, you want a smooth, nice transition where the notes flow one into the other. So normally when you're picking different notes on a guitar, there's a definite separation there because every time you pick, it touches a string, it actually silences it. So for legato techniques, you want to kind of stay away from this heavy alternate pick stroke and rely more on whatever your fretting hand is. So for me, it's going to be my left hand. So a couple of different techniques that you can do to do this. One of the major ones that we see a lot is what's called a hammer-on. Hammer-on is when you go from a lower note to a higher note just by slamming another finger hard enough against the string to attack it and fret it at the same time. So it takes maybe a little more velocity on your fingers part to set that string into motion again. You don't want to be light about it because if you go too slow, you're going to just mute the string. Okay? Another trick I use is I try to hit right behind the fret. If you get right behind that metal fret, it seems to be a spot where you can get a lot of energy into the string and also simultaneously fret it. So I can also hammer on from an open position. It's the same thing. So whenever you're going from a lower note to a higher note, that's what's called a hammer on. When you do the reverse, you go from a higher to a lower, that's called a pull off. Slightly different technique. So what I'm going to do is on the note I'm starting on, you want to just bend the string slightly, not a lot, not enough to detune it, just enough to create tension in that string to where when I release this finger, you're going to actually hear it plucked. It's almost like my left hand is plucking the string. And then you immediately hear the note that I'm fretting underneath. Or again, I can go to an open string and you would just hear the open note underneath. So you can put these together in any way you want. You can do two hammer-ons together, two pull-offs together. You can do them back and forth. Now, you can also string these together in musical ornaments. One of them is called a trill, where you just kind of rapidly go back and forth between two notes. And because it's all basically a left-hand technique, in my case, you're not relying on synchronizing both hands. So typically the left hand can kind of fret and unfret quicker than your right hand can keep up with it. So it lends itself to really, really fast, quick flurries of notes. And you can blow through scales like that too. Now, you're not just limited to the left hand being the hammer-on and the puller-offer. You can also do this with this hand. And what they call that is two-handed tapping when you employ both hands to do this. But the technique's basically the same. You're taking a finger on this hand, striking the string so hard that you're simultaneously fretting and attacking it. And it's essentially a hammer-on. So you can combine that with your left hand to get some kind of expansive note ranges going, which really lends itself to playing chord arpeggios. It's easy to get a scale in there with one hand. But when you want to get a full arpeggio, which is all the different notes from a chord, you kind of need that extra space. That extra hand helps quite a lot with that. So one of the really, really most conventional techniques that they do for this is what's called just a triplet legato pull-off technique. So let's say I'm going to take this chord arpeggio right here. So I have my bottom note here, the 5th fret on the B string. Second note is going to be right here, the 8th fret on the B string, and then my top note is going to be at the 12th fret on the same string. It's all on the same string. So cool thing about doing it all on the same string is physics means that once one note ends, the other one begins. There's no crossover at all. They all butt up exactly against each other. So I'm going to start off the technique by tapping. With my right hand, I use my middle finger, but a lot of people use their index. I'm just going to tap hard enough on that fret to get that note out. And then you actually want to pull off with your tapping hand. So it's the same technique. You just put a slight tension on the string, not enough to detune it, just enough to where when your hand actually leaves, you're flicking the string. And then that's going to sound the next note underneath. So that means I have to fret this before I let go of this note. Okay? So now I'm going to have my first note of the arpeggio pulled off into the bottom note of the arpeggio. And then you want to use another finger I'm going to use finger 4 right here to hammer on the middle note of the arpeggio. And that's where we get the triplet from. It's triplet, 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 triplet. And you can get this going pretty fast if you take it slow at first with a metronome, get it nice and clean, and then very slowly build up the tempo. And then you can do different chords. You don't have to do just that one. You can actually do a whole chord progression if you wanted to, like So it lends itself to just really, really quick successions of notes, very, very smooth. So that's my legato technique lagniappe lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.